Laura, if you want to start the recording, and we can get going.
Okay.
And we are recording. Welcome everybody to our Kidlit Distancing Social. And I trust you're all having a lovely evening. It's beautiful here in Colorado, absolutely wonderful springtime weather. And we've been enjoying that. And we've been enjoying talking to you. And we're going to certainly enjoy welcoming Julie Hedlund as our guest tonight. So first of all, just a little bit of business that we take care of every week. If you are brand new to us and you maybe found out about this on Facebook or somebody told you, you want to be on our list so you can be getting the notifications every week for the new social, the subject and the guest, and also that you can get the replays. And the easiest way to do that, and as a Laura, if you could move to the next slide, please.
Hang on.
There we go. Easiest way to do that is to go to the address that you see on the bottom there, writeforkids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet. And not only will you get on our list, you'll also get this amazing goodie that we put together for our 30th anniversary. It is basically a crash course in writing children's books. And it's totally free. It's really cool and no obligation. So anyway, go ahead and if you are brand new to us, please do sign up for that. You'll get that goodie, you'll get other goodies, and you'll also find out what is happening with the Kidlit Distancing Social. So we can move on to the next slide because we have something fun that we're starting. We're going to be doing the polling like we always do. But in a minute, Laura is about to come on. And you're going to have to figure out where she is in the world. And it's where in the Kidlit world she might be. So it could be a real place or a fictional place. And she'll give you hints as the evening wears on, but we'd love for you to try to guess that. So I'm going to invite Laura on right now to join us. There she is. And I'm going to bail out, say goodbye. You guys will be now in the good hands of Laura and Julie. And then Laura, what you can do is you could stop sharing so people can see your screen nice and big.
I will. Okay.
All right. Have a great time, everybody.
Okay. So, hello, everybody. Sorry, I plugged in a new microphone a minute ago and didn't realize it was on. So you heard me yelling at John through the wall. But I'm not really on the other side of the wall. I am somewhere in the world. So every week I thought it would be really fun if I had pictures up of some literary landmark from around the world, and you have to guess where I am. So first I'm going to turn on my my chat box here, which for some reason, oh, there it is. Okay. And this is your first clue. If you need 3 clues, I have them tonight. I can change my backdrop anytime, but this is your first clue. So I want you throughout the evening to try to check or try to guess, first of all, who is this person behind me? And I'm sorry if you're on Facebook, this picture might be a little small, so hopefully you can all see it if you're at least on your computer. And where is she? So no, not Oxford, England. So let's, we're gonna, she'll be back. I'm gonna share my screen again now so we can go through some other cool business, but Queen of Hearts. Okay, Stephanie, yes, you got that right. It is the Queen of Hearts, not Windsor though, not Portugal. Well, she is in Wonderland, yes, but her image here as a statue is somewhere else, somewhere in the world. She is yelling off with their heads, yes. So I'm gonna continue sharing my screen and then we'll come back with another clue and see if you can guess. Okay. Where am I? There I am. Can you tell I have stay-at-home brain? Okay, so as we do every week, we celebrate our successes of our people. And I have some fun ones for you today. First of all, Don Doig published Lulabelle Loves to Bake with Pennant Publications in April, just last month. And the book includes 26 recipes kids can make with dad for Father's Day. So good for you, Dawn. That looks like a really fun book. This is a celebration that our subscriber, Cheryl, told us about a while back, and we didn't get a chance to share it because this was, before we were doing this. So I wanted to make sure that we got to announce that Cheryl Gwyther, I hope I said your name right, Cheryl, published her middle grade historical adventure, Sweet Adversity, in July of 2018 with HarperCollins Australia. And she also told me that the manuscript won the Australian Society of Authors Mentorship and an SCBWI Work of Outstanding Progress grant before it was even published. So good for you, Cheryl. Those are 3 great reasons to celebrate right there. Carol Doringer, our lovely customer blueprinter. She's attended my Vermont Writers Roundtable workshops. She said, I'm celebrating because I haven't given up yet. Yay, Carol. I think that is an excellent thing to celebrate. And having seen Carol's work, I think we will be celebrating a publication very soon. So thank you for sharing that, Carol. And Amber Leffler sent us this picture last week of her Maine Coon cat enjoying the Bad Kitty coloring book that I showed you last week on the Distancing Social. And I just thought that was so awesome. I am celebrating that cats also love us. So here's another opportunity for you to send me great stuff. Send us your animal pictures, especially if they are watching the Distancing Social, or if they're helping you write in some way. We would love to share those pictures on a Distancing Social. So send us your good news. Send us your celebrations, send us your animal pictures, and it all goes to mail@writeforkids.org and put celebrate in the subject line. And I would also like to take this opportunity to ask you if any of you want to contact us with questions, needing information, anything like that. A lot of you are new to us here on these Distancing Socials, and we're so glad you're here. Please use this email, mail@writeforkids.org. Please don't message me on Facebook because I might not see it. I consider my Facebook messaging to be something that I do with my friends. And so I might not get back to you right away or whatever. I find it, and I tend to do that on my phone, and I find it really hard to type long answers on my phone. So please use this email, mail@writeforkids.org, for any correspondence with us. And if you are celebrating something, please put celebrate in the subject line so I make sure to see it, and I will use it on a future Distancing Social. So now we're going to take a poll. Woo! We do this every week. So last week we did Best Children's Book Title Fiction Edition. Now we're going to do Nonfiction Edition. So I am working the poll this week. So you've been warned. Okay. So here are your choices. You should see this on your screen. And I'm sorry if you're watching on Facebook, you can't vote on the poll. This is something that only happens in our Zoom webinar. So hopefully you'll join us next time on Zoom. Here are your choices. You forgot your shirt, Amelia Bloomer. She's wearing a dead bird on her head. Everyone poops. Gross as a snot otter. The world of weird animals. And finally, it's disgusting and we ate it. And yes, these are all actual books. She's Wearing a Dead Bird on Her Head is a classic, one of my favorites. It's Disgusting and We Ate It has also been around quite a while, but it is still one that I absolutely love. And I think it's well, I'm not going to tell you what I think is a great title. This is your poll. You get to vote. Okay, we got 5 more seconds. And it's close. I can see the results. They are very close. Okay, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let's see the results. Sure. And I hope you can all see that. It's Disgusting and We Ate It came in first. But, you know, good showing by Everyone Poops and Gross as a Snot Otter. I mean, those are all solid titles. You can't argue with any of them. And as I said last week, when we looked at these fiction titles, this just shows you how important a title is. And as you can see, nonfiction titles can be funny, but they also give you a sense of what the book's about, and also kind of the, you know, the author's focus and slant and take on the topic. So She's Wearing a Dead Bird on Her Head is about John Audubon and the start of the Audubon Society, and the others are pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, all great books. Okay. So, are you ready for another clue? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm working a lot of technology here. Not my strong suit. Okay. Here's your second clue. You may have seen these mountain goats on TV recently because they came into this particular town and they live outside of town, but they kind of took over the town because everybody was staying home and nobody was wandering the streets. They are very famous mountain goats in this particular part of the world. So that's your second clue. Okay, Beth says in Wales. Beth, you are right.
Somebody got it actually on Facebook too.
Oh, I see that's Marlena got it. Landudno, Wales.
Lisa yes. On Facebook also got it.
Awesome. Landudno, Wales. Awesome town in North Wales. We were there a couple years ago. And I have my third clue that I have to show you here because this was going to really be the clincher here. Okay, so this is also in Landudno. This particular statue says, and this statue is the White Rabbit, and it says, this statue commemorates on this very shore during happy rambles with Alice Liddell, Lewis Carroll was inspired to write the literary treasure Alice in Wonderland. So Alice Liddell's family had a summer house in Landudno, and their friend was Lewis Carroll. They invited him to join them, and here is where he became inspired to write Alice in Wonderland. And there is a trail of statues, it's called the Alice Trail, all throughout town of all the characters. It is just wonderful. So if you ever get to go to Landudno, and Landudno itself is just a gorgeous town, do it. It's a great place to visit. Okay, so now we're back to business. So, industry updates and links of interest, which we share every week. Let's see, I have to move my head out of the way so I can read the slide. Okay, so Jane Friedman, who's an industry expert, and really you should be following her blog. She's very smart. She has a great blog post called How to Throw a Virtual Book Launch Using Facebook Live. And it's full of useful tips. I know a lot of you might have books coming out, and obviously you can't do live events right now. So this is a great way to do a Facebook Live book launch. And if you're self-publishing, you can do one as well. So on her blog, it's at janefriedman.com/blog. You can find this post, but just go to janefriedman.com and sign up for her free e-newsletters. And I get the weekly digest version of her blog, which is great. So it just comes once a week and it gives all the posts that she has that week. And she's always got really, really great information. So you should definitely go sign up for that. So here's a couple publishing things that I'm just going to alert you to, but don't worry about any of this at the moment because we're going to be talking about this more in a couple weeks. So it was just announced that Simon & Schuster is reorganizing their whole children's book division, and they're breaking it into two entities. Their trade publishing group is going to focus on picture books, middle grade, and YA, and that's a lot of the imprints you might be familiar with, like Margaret McElderry, Athenaeum, Beechtree Books, Paula Wiseman. I know I'm forgetting some. There's a whole bunch. Simon & Schuster Books for Young Readers. So they're all going to be there. And then there's going to be a new branded division, which they don't have a name for yet, that's going to concentrate on preschool titles, beginning readers, chapter books, graphic novels, licensing, and middle grade brands. So anything with licensed characters is going to fall under that, as well as intellectual property. So again, that has to do with licensing and that kind of thing. So if you go to publishersweekly.com, which is I've talked about this a lot. Publishers Weekly is a big trade magazine, and they are currently making all of their content free in digital form on publishersweekly.com. So May 20th, yesterday is when that article came out. If you want to read more about that, you can. Two other restructurings. Trustbridge Global Media has acquired Walker Books, which has a US and UK division, though it's based in the UK, and Candlewick Press, which is part of Walker. That is a US publisher. It started out as an independent press, and then it was acquired by Walker Books. So far they're saying they're not going to make any big changes in Walker or Candlewick, but we're kind of just waiting to see what happens with that. And then this was a few weeks ago, Boyds Mills and Kane acquired a majority interest in Min Edition, and that's how it's spelled, with a lowercase m, a children's publisher that specializes in board and picture books, which I think is very interesting. So Boyds Mills Press was an independent publisher. It was part of the Highlights company. They were acquired by Kane Press last year. Kane Press is owned by China's Thingdom Media Group. So what we're talking about here is we've got these big conglomerates purchasing publishers, and then we have big publishers restructuring. So the reason I'm telling you this, first of all, I think it's interesting that we have concentration, deliberate concentration on two of these announcements here on preschool titles. So we've got board books, young picture books, novelty books, things like that. Interesting. Those are areas in publishing we haven't heard a lot about recently. They've kind of held steady, but maybe they're poised to kind of make a boom, you know, to grow or expand. So I think that's something to pay attention to if you are writing those kinds of books. But also, I'm going to have someone on a Distancing Social in 2 weeks who's very smart about all this stuff. And we're going to kind of talk about what impact all of these mergers and reorganizations and stuff might have on you as writers. So I just wanted to put this out there so you kind of know what's going on, and we'll be talking about it some more in a couple of weeks. Okay, and here's a couple other really cool links of interest. These are from our actual members and viewers who sent these in to me, things that they have been doing during this time of COVID-19. Illustrator Mara Altorio has created a free coloring book called the COVID-19 Coloring Book as a learning tool for kids, and it can be downloaded on the Brainspace magazine site at brainspacemagazine.com. And if you've never looked at Brainspace magazine, it's really cool. If you have kids who are kind of in that middle grade age, go check it out. It's an electronic magazine, but then you get this app for your phone or your tablet, and you can, or no, actually it's a print magazine. You can hold the magazine in front of the phone or tablet and read it through this app, and it's artificial intelligence. So it makes like if there's a picture of a rhinoceros on the cover of the magazine, it looks like the rhinoceros is coming out of the magazine and moving toward you. And it does really cool stuff like that. So your kids might like that. Debbie Chartoff just wrote that as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, where so many vulnerable people feel isolated from family and friends, I have founded the Note Connection as a Facebook group. Our mission is to collaborate with communities to foster pen pal friendships. The focus is to establish connections with elderly in assisted living and nursing homes who are limited with social interaction and activities. Anyone interested can request to join. Details on how to get started and a listing of participating pen pal communities can be found on Facebook at The Note Connection. So go to Facebook, search for The Note Connection, ask to join that group. And she said it's also, she welcomes children. Obviously, an adult needs to sign up for the group, but if you want to get your kids involved, writing letters to elderly who are in assisted living and nursing homes who are not able to have visitors right now. I think that is a really wonderful thing. So I wanted to let you all know about that. So now I would like to welcome my guest, Julie Hedlund. So Julie is the founder of the 12 by 12 Picture Book Writing Challenge at 12by12challenge.com. She is also an author. Her two picture books, My Love for You is the Sun, and A Troop is a Group of Monkeys, were published by Little Bahalia Publishing. And she has a new picture book coming out in the fall of 2021 with Philomel. And it's called Over Bear Under Where, which I love. I think that's such a great title. And she is also the co-founder, along with John and I, and Katie Davis and Emma Walton Hamilton, of the Picture Book Summit online picture book conference, which takes place every year, the first Saturday in October. So, hi, Julie.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me. I have just been enjoying your intro there and the clues and.
Yeah, so this was very personal because we've been there and looking through the pictures today, finding photographs for this, I just got so nostalgic and I was like, oh, I want to get on a plane now and go back to Landun now. It's such a beautiful spot. But yeah, every week we're going to have a different literary landmark from around the world. So I think that should be fun.
Yeah, we can take virtual vacations, which is nice at this point, definitely.
Absolutely. So we are going to talk rhyming picture books today, which I'm excited about. That is something that I get a lot of questions on. I'm sure you do too, 12 by 12. And Julie, I consider you an expert in rhyming picture books because you've written them. And in our 12 by 12, in our Picture Book Summit workshops, when you did the verse curse, was that last year or the year before?
Oh, I think it was like 3 years ago now.
3 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I have some exciting news for you about that too.
Okay, tell us.
Oh no, continue. You finish and I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, anyway, you did a great workshop for Picture Book Summit on rhyming, writing in rhyme. And a lot of people think it's easy. And of course, it's not. It's very complicated. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about that today, about sort of the 2 or 3 most important things that people have to be aware of and keep in mind when they are writing in rhyme.
Okay. Well, the number one thing, and I said this in the presentation that you're referring to, the verse curse, is that when people approach writing in rhyme, they almost, when they're new and they haven't had training in writing in rhyme, almost always they write it exactly backwards from the way you should be approaching it, which is thinking about end rhymes first. So trying really hard to make the last word of whichever, sentences need to rhyme in your stanzas, that first, and then maybe the meter second. So after they get the end rhyme situated, they might work on counting syllables, or if they have a more advanced knowledge of meter, be looking at the meter. And then lastly, the story. So what typically happens is folks who are writing in rhyme, who are new, are trying to wedge the story to fit the rhyming pattern. And what we really want to do is flip that whole formula around. So you start with the story, just like always. The story has to be front and center, and rhyming has to serve the story, not the other way around. So your story is never in service to the rhyme. The rhyme is in service to the story, which means you have to consider whether or not telling that story in rhyme is the best way to tell the story. And one way you can do that is by writing the story, or at least the outline of the story, in prose first, to make sure that you have all the beats and the plot lines and so forth. I'm just laughing at one of the comments saying that I probably have a clone because I'm like everywhere with the webinars and whatnot. And then you have the meter, which is even more important than the end rhymes. And meter is, we're not going to be able to obviously have a full course on how to write rhyme well and how to do meter, how to learn meter, but it is more than counting syllables. That it's an art, it's a science as much as it is an art. And you have to choose one and keep it consistent, even if you vary it. You know, some people vary it intentionally, and I can show you a couple of examples of that further on. But the meter comes next, and then it's the end rhyme, which should serve the story and the meter. And then so that's the biggest thing, is making sure that the story serves, everything is serving the story.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really good point. I think a lot of people don't think about that. And by serving the story, do you mean that the meter that you're using has to fit the tone of the story and the age group and what the story's about? So these are all considerations that go into just the structure of the rhyme before you even get into, does the rhyme even make sense, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up about tone and style, and because that's a way to determine in the first place whether or not the story should be told in rhyme. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes I think a lot of people who are starting with picture books begin with rhyme because they remember picture books that they loved from when they were kids that rhyme. And we all know that children do love rhyming picture books. And so we kind of associate rhyming with children and children's picture books. But there are some stories that just don't fit, that where rhyming just doesn't fit. It gets in the way of the story because there is so much science to rhyme that sometimes when you're so busy trying to make all that rhyming work, you can really get lost from the story. And so there are good reasons to write in rhyme if your story already has a natural rhythm, if it's very musical, for example. And I have I doubt if we'll get through them, but I have a stack of them here. So, but some stories lend themselves better, like capers or cumulative tales, or books for very young children where the story is very simple and it helps with predictability and literacy building and so forth. So yes, you definitely, all of those things are important when you're considering whether the story should be in rhyme at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other consideration is that these are going to be read out loud, mm-hmm. probably by an adult. And if the rhyme is forced, if the meter starts out one way and then suddenly changes. That's hard to read out loud. And I know when I read rhyming stories out loud, it's almost like you get this momentum going if the rhythm is and the meter is really good. And then if it suddenly changes or there's a glitch, you lose that momentum when you're reading out loud, and you kind of stop and you have to go back and read it again. So these are all things to think about when you're writing that rhyming story.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's very difficult to write a well-crafted story. I mean, everybody here, I'm assuming, is a children's author at least, and I suspect a lot of you are picture book authors. So you know how difficult it is already to take an idea from the air and spin it into the gold that is a complete story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and has rising tension and beautiful language and satisfying resolution and conclusion and that sort of magical ending. And then when you add having to make it rhyme well on top of that, it's something you really need to be committed to, and it can make your job more difficult.
Yes.
Or if you're like me, it can be a lot of fun. I mean, I think rhyming, to me, I love doing jigsaw puzzles, and writing in rhyme to me feels very much like that process. If this piece looks like it might fit there, but it doesn't quite, so now I'm going to have to find a different word, but if I use that word, then it sort of changes the meaning over here, and I have to, and so there's a lot of I enjoy that. Some people, I think it might make them a little insane. And it does. You can, I remember one day spending 4 hours on 2 lines in a rhyming manuscript. Yeah.
Wow. I bet that's not uncommon for
No, it is not. It is not.
Yeah. What is your process? Do you write your stories out in prose first? At least roughly, so you kind of know what has to happen before you rhyme them?
It's interesting because I've done both. And so the 2 rhyming books that you shared on the slide are concept books. And you do get a lot more concept books that are written in rhyme. And part of the reason, I think, is because they don't have to have that strict narrative structure. So a concept book being one that's teaching, an ABC book or seasons or something. And so there's a little bit more flexibility there. But when I have written whole stories in rhyme, one of which has been on submission now for a while, I don't know if it will ever sell, but I have done it both ways, where I just got the meter in my head and I started writing it and kept going. And then the one that's on submission right now, I actually wrote it in prose first, and then I wrote like a rhyming version of it, and I was told the rhyming version definitely needs to be the one, and that was a lot easier because I already had the plot points in place. Right now I'm working on another one, and I've been writing more in prose lately than in rhyme, which was harder for me at first. And in fact, when you introduced me and I realized the title of my book that's coming out in 2021 rhymes, actually, but the book is not, it's not a rhyming book, so it'll be my first published work in prose. It still has a lot of wordplay, but I had to challenge myself to write in prose, and now I'm just starting to go back to rhyme because I have some ideas that just really lend themselves to it, and I'm finding it easier to get at least an outline of where I want to go with the story in prose, and then working on the rhyme.
I think that's, I can't imagine just writing the first draft in rhyme as you're figuring out the story. To me, that would just be too many balls in the air, having to juggle at once.
Yeah. And that was, I think maybe some people can do it who have written 50 books in rhyme and kind of you know, think in rhyme. And
Mhm.
but I do know some authors like Corey Rosen Schwartz, for instance. I believe she just gets her ideas and then will write it in rhyme. But I think that's also why you see a lot of fractured fairy tales that are written in rhyme,
Mhm.
or spoofs or spin-offs, because the structure of the story is already there
Yeah.
and you're just twisting it, right? So
Mhm.
I have Three Ninja Pigs here, which is one of Corey's books. So it's basically taking, you know, the three little pigs and making them ninjas, which doesn't mean that it's not still difficult to tell that story, but the basic
Mhm.
structure and the beats and everything are there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I know you wanted to show or read some excerpts from books, so why don't I turn my camera off so that you can be full screen, and then you can share, and then when you're done, I'll come back on.
Okay, well, you just keep me honest in terms of time, because
Okay,
I,
I'll
I
keep you
have a
honest.
huge stack of books here, and I just, you know me,
Oh yeah, that's
I,
okay.
I thought it would be fun. You know, one of the things I love about rhyme is it's just a lot of times just fun to read.
It
And I think
is.
we can all use a little bit of fun right now.
Absolutely. Okay, I
All
will
right.
enjoy along with everyone else.
Yes. And before I start that reading, I will tell you that the presentation that Laura mentioned, the verse curse that I gave a few years ago, I just, there's a book coming out on June 2nd from one of my 12 by 12 members, Lindsay Leslie, and I don't have a picture of it, but it's called Dusk Explorers. And she told me that this book, that she actually had a major breakthrough on this book while watching the verse curse at Picture Book Summit. And interestingly enough, that book doesn't rhyme. So I think, I haven't talked to her specifically yet, and I don't have the book in front of me yet because it doesn't come out until June 1st, but I think it made her realize that she was trying to force this book into rhyme and it didn't belong in rhyme. So that's something that can definitely happen as you're learning more about writing in rhyme. So keep that in mind, which a lot of people, I know authors who write in both prose and rhyme, and they'll go back and forth, you know, with different versions and then choose the one that they think is working best for the story. I saw Steve Swinburne come on, and he and I were together at the very first boot camp, picture book boot camp that Jane Yolen did at her house, which feels like 100 years ago now. And she is an absolute master of rhyming picture books, all things poetry, basically any kind of writing. But this book is one of my very favorites, rhyming and just of all time. It's called Where Have the Unicorns Gone? And this book is 20 years old, I looked. But I had the privilege and pleasure of sleeping in the room in her house where the bed was underneath this painting. And I don't know if you can see that or not. I'm still seeing Laura's video, but not video, but like a still shot. But I don't know if you can see this, but this is the last spread of the book, and the unicorns are coming right out of the sea. And I was so thrilled, and I because already this book was one of my favorites, and I'm just going to read you the first couple verses, because if you do a rhyming book well, it can be timeless, truly timeless. And listen to the language. Oh, this book is just love it. Where have the unicorns gone? They have left their haven of greening bowers, of dappled down trees and yellow-eyed flowers, their dimity dells and golden glades, where shadows shift in silver shades. They have followed the path where the nightingale calls. And I have goosebumps up my arm every time. Down, down to the water that tumbles and falls, to splash in the silent drifts of pool. I mean, what a wallop of an opening. verse for this. I mean, the language, the beauty, the specificity of the words, the old-fashioned feel of it. We're talking about unicorns, and we have dimming downs and greening bowers and golding glades, and did I say dimity dells? Because that's one of my favorites. And it's just lovely. One more verse. Where have the unicorns gone, routed by gouts of iron red flames, by helmeted knights and their steel weapon games? They have galloped past castles of towering stone, gouged from the hillsides from which birds have flown, past iron-plowed fields, past grazed over ground. They have galloped away, never looking around, to wade in the perfect peace of ponds. So one thing that you'll notice here is that there's this meter, there's this consistent meter, but there's a pause at the end of every verse that doesn't rhyme, and it ends in the water. So in the first one, it was to splash in the silent drifts of pool. And the second one, to wade in the perfect peace of ponds. So that's a very intentional pause, a stopping point that Jane is giving us in this book, where we know that we're now transitioning into the next scene. And it's always taking us back to the water, when then, of course, we have this dramatic ending. So when Laura said, when you're reading a book, and you sort of get into the rhythm of the meter, and then if it changes, it's confusing. Well, it's okay for it to change as long as it changes in the same way consistently throughout, because that's exactly the purpose of that, is that it tells you there's a change coming now. Be alert. It alerts you to it. The problem is, if you don't do that in a consistent way and in a meaningful way, then people just get confused. Your readers just get confused. So anyway, I thought I would start with that. And now let's take a look, a very different kind of book. This is by Lisa Rogers, brand new, Hound Won't Go. And this is for a very young audience, and very kid friendly. Who doesn't love dogs? This is a stubborn old hound, and yet it tells a complete story in very few words and fun rhyme. Much simpler. Light flashes, hound dashes. Nosy hound sniffs ground, finds a spot he likes a lot. We see where this is going, right? Uh-oh, hound won't go. So we have time, I'm fast forwarding here. Time to go, hound says no. Drivers frown, hound lies down. Try a treat, hound won't eat. Tug the rope, hound says nope. So this is our middle, our stubborn hound taking a nap in the middle of a busy intersection, but then thunder claps, whoosh, off hound goes. Ears flapping, no more napping, splashing feet, pound the street. Hound goes and goes and goes. So you can feel there the pace of that pick up. First, we've got this kind of lazy, no, hound won't go. And then the thunderstorm comes, and suddenly it's this very frenetic, and he goes and goes and goes. And that is a shift in the meter, but it's also stretching it, right? Because now the hound is running and running and running. So this is an example where you can use the rhyme as a tool for pacing your book and moving the story along. And when you make those little shifts, it helps the reader, in addition to the visual cues in the story itself, move along with the story. Let's see. I wonder if, okay. Another thing that I want to point out about writing in rhyme is in the verse curse, which I keep, because I talked about all of this. One of the crimes of rhyme, if you will, is using end rhymes that are too simple. Right now, and if you have a book for a very young child like this one, the rhymes, of course, will be simpler, but they're still light flashes, hound dashes. It's not always going to be no go, sun, fun, sky high, light switches, hound itches. So even in a story for a very young child, there's some interesting language here that's going to teach them words that perhaps they don't already know in the context, right? But it's also, you can take that even further. And I have another book here from 12 by 12 member who she and I also share the same agent. And she was also a boot camper of Jane's. And this book just came out, I think, a month ago, Free for You and Me, What Our First Amendment Means. Yes, you can actually have rhyming nonfiction books. And the nice thing about that is that it can take a fairly complex subject like the Constitution and make it more accessible to younger readers who maybe are still more used to seeing stories written in rhyme. This has more words and more complex words. It's for certainly an older audience, but listen to some of these words that get rhymed here. We declared our independence from the far off British throne for ourselves and our descendants. We would write laws of our own. So we wrote the Constitution, forming a new government with rules for every institution, Congress, courts, and president. That's impressive to rhyme words like independence, constitution, government. These are not easy words to rhyme. And by doing so, there's a lot of complexity in the First Amendment that kind of gets boiled down into this very child-friendly way by using the rhyme. And then there's jumping off points for kids who want to go further. There's dialogue that isn't in rhyme. So they're almost like sidebars here. So let me find another one. The First Amendment says that you can share your point of view, agree or disagree, discuss, say what you think is true. Very important book for our times, I would say. And I'm seeing Laura come back on, so I'm wondering if I'm getting the
I just want to make sure we save a little time for some questions, but
right.
Those are just great examples. So thank you for sharing those. And I like that they were so different.
Right, and that's what I wanted to show, is that there isn't just one way to rhyme, and there isn't one type of book that lends itself to rhyme. Mm-hmm. But you can tell in all three of those examples that there were clear decisions made by the author as to why this book should be in rhyme, and being very careful about telling the story that way.
Well, even Jane's book that you read first, you talked about how she did change the meter, but clearly she did it deliberately. And you can really tell the difference when the author knows what they're doing and they are twisting or stretching a rule a little bit or a rhyme format for a reason instead of just being a mistake.
Yes. You can tell, because if you read those books out loud where they're mistake, you just kind of clunk.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was Christy Mahaley.
Yes.
The author of the last book. And if you want, Laura, I can email you the titles.
That would be great. And we can add them when we send out the replay. We can put the titles there.
Sure.
That would be terrific. Thank you. So we have a few questions here that I wanted to be able to ask. This one comes from Facebook. Well, not from Facebook, from Katie Paul. Facebook is watching you, Julie.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Do you consult a group of beta readers? Or what would you suggest a children's writer do if they have a rhyming book that they would like to submit? So do you ask other people to read it and to kind of check your rhyme for you?
That is an excellent question. And I think it's important to have beta readers or critique partners, both who don't write in rhyme
Mm-hmm.
and those who do, and who can help you with the scansion of the meter. And the reason why I say it's just as important to have readers who don't write in rhyme is because they're the ones who are going to be able to tell if the story isn't working all that well, because they're not paying as much attention to the meter. So, you're going to get different information, but it's essential that you work with somebody who understands rhyme and who knows how to scan for it and writes in rhyme themselves, even if you have to pay for a professional critique, which, by the way, I'm just going to plug Laura for a minute, because she helped me unlock the thing that enabled me to get this book published. And I'm not going to tell the whole story now, and some of you probably know it, but it was just one thing that was not working and sticking in my craw. And you need to have somebody who understands how to fix things that aren't working in rhyme. So you need both. I would say both.
And having that objective read of your material is so important, because you're so close to it and you have been agonizing over the rhyme for so long. And sometimes it just takes someone else to come in who's never read the manuscript and go, oh, that's the problem right there. It happens no matter what kind of book you're writing. You need that objective input. But I think with rhyme especially, people who are reading it cold for the first time might pick up on those things.
Yes, and painful as it is, you have to ask them, you have to have other people read it out loud to you, because you know what you're trying to say, you know the meter, the rhythm that you're trying to achieve, and you can't tell if you're actually getting that until someone else reads it to you.
Exactly, you can hear it then. Yeah. So Lynn asks, I find writing in rhyme mathematical. I'm math challenged. Is there another way to approach writing in rhyme?
Look, I am the most math challenged person on the planet. I just like break out in hives so it is somewhat mathematical. There's a little bit of counting involved, but if all you really have to do is understand how syllables work and how stress in syllables work. And even if you don't, you can always consult a dictionary for that too, because they'll tell you where the stresses are. So all meter is where the stressed and unstressed syllables are. It's way too big of a topic to cover here tonight. And then the way you make it consistent is by picking the same number of stressed and unstressed in each line, unless you want to differentiate it like Jane did, or like I did in My Love for You is the Sun. The last line in every verse is sort of a standalone, but it's done in every verse.
In every verse, so there's a pattern.
Right.
And do you worry about starting the lines either on a stressed or unstressed syllable and keeping that consistent throughout? Do you think about that as well?
You don't. So Renee Latulippe, who runs the Lyrical Language Lab, is the absolute expert on all this, but you're allowed to have a stray unstressed syllable at the beginning or the end of a line without having it mess up your meter.
Right.
So I don't worry about that as much. Like you don't absolutely have to start every line with a stressed, as long as you have the same number of stressed and the meter is the same throughout. Or likewise, you can end on a stressed or an unstressed.
Right. And I think if you're starting say all your lines start with a stressed syllable, but then one line doesn't, but the first word is something like the,
right.
Those are almost sort of throwaway words, and the reader is going to skip right through that and get to the stressed.
That's exactly right, Laura. And although you do want to be careful of does and that's, and things that you stick in to make meter work, because
Right.
there was an editor, and I cannot remember which house she was at, but she called them empty calories.
Ah.
So you can get away with that a little bit, but you know, again, when you read beautiful rhyming, amazing rhyming picture books, you won't see too many of those in each line, because you want that language to be so vivid and meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. So, a couple more good questions here. Vivian Kirkfield asks, what are your favorite resources when you're writing in rhyme?
Well, I am at the point where I kind of understand meter enough that I just figure it out. But I highly recommend Renee Latulipe's Lyrical Language Lab. She's got a bunch of videos on her YouTube channel right now called Peek and Critique, where she goes through the essentials of meter. There's a book called it's not Ode to Joy, but it's by Stephen Fry, and it's about poetry, and especially in meter. And also Mary Oliver has a book that I used a lot when I was first starting out, that I'll have to go look up, and we can include those in the handout as well, because I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But it's good to have in the beginning, it's good to have some books right in front of you where you can study. And the other thing too is take rhyming books that you love and scan them, see what meter they're using. That's honestly the best practice, is to use mentor texts. Oh, the Ode Less Traveled, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, by Stephen Fry. Yeah. Great. Yeah, Renee Latulipe is a genius.
Yes, she is.
People are asking her last name.
And she was one of our guests at Picture Book Summit a couple years ago too. Oh yeah, Linda Ashman, her website has great resources too.
She writes terrific rhyming books.
She does. Anything by her is amazing.
So Robin asks, do you think there's still a market for rhyming picture books, even though they're often discouraged by publishers due to translation problems? So publishers are thinking globally now, and when you translate a rhyming book into another language, it doesn't work. Have you heard anything about that as far as submissions go?
That's a great question, and I have a couple of different answers for it. One is that even though rhyming may not translate into another language, it doesn't necessarily mean that your book won't get sold. I should have brought it out here, but My Love for You Is the Sun was sold in Korea, and I have a Korean version of that book. So if they really like the message and the theme, and they can find a way to translate that even in non-rhyming, it doesn't necessarily mean it won't sell, but it's a much harder sell. So that's why it's so important to write amazing rhyming picture books, because what they're going to be looking for then is a book that they think will do really well in the North American market, as well as any other primarily English speaking countries. So it is a tougher sell, but yes, kids perpetually and universally love rhyming books. They get published year over year over year. And the reason why editors and agents say they don't want them is not because they really don't want them so much as that a lot of what they get sent is just not publishable. It's not a high enough quality to be published. And they get a lot of it. So it's easier for them to say, don't send me any rhyme, than to weed through a lot of rhyming manuscripts that aren't going to make the cut.
Exactly. So Mary says, some rhyme is sing-songy. How does one avoid that? Well, I imagine sometimes you want that, depending on the story, especially if it's for very young kids.
Yeah. That's where word count comes in a lot. I think that's why you see rhyming picture books that are a lot of times are shorter in word counts, because if it goes on and on and on. It can get a little sing-songy, but that's where the variance, the strategic variance of meter can make a difference. Or if you look at Christie's book, I mean, I don't know how many words are in here total, but I suspect it's quite a bit, but then you can break it up with reading the sidebars, and she breaks it up too with conversations between two children as they go along. But that you typically don't find stories hugely complex that go on that have a ton of words for that reason. And if it is getting sing-songy, it could be a sign that the book isn't meant to be written in rhyme.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Just looking in the chat box here, Natalie said her rhyming book, Nothing, came out last year and this year has been translated into Hungarian.
Excellent.
So,
Yay.
Yay. So Natalie, send me that email at mail@writeforkids.org and we'll put that in our Celebrate next week because that's awesome.
I see one question that just came up that I want to answer, if that's okay with you, if we have time.
Sure.
Michelle asks, if you have rhyming verses repeated after bits of prose, what type of book would you pitch it at? And that's excellent. And I actually do have one of those, and I've seen more of that happening lately. But again, it's got to be very strategic. So in fact, one of the books I almost pulled tonight was Monster Academy by Jane Yolen and her daughter Heidi Stempel. And the teacher speaks in verse because that's the mummy's curse. But all the other kids don't speak in rhyme. And Little Red Rhyming Hood by Sue Fleece is another one that's like that, where Red can only speak in rhyme, and but then that power gets transferred to the bully, and it's a great story, and a good little twist on the Little Red Riding Hood. So you can do that, and even Christie does that in the First Amendment book, but you have to know why these parts rhyme and why these parts don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't know what exactly you would call it other than a combination of, I don't know that you really need to, you don't have a name for that kind of book per se, but
yeah, so in your query letter, I guess you would say it mixes rhyme and prose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, last question. I saw scroll by somewhere about are agents open to rhyming picture books?
Yes, I mean, my agent is one who says absolutely don't send me any rhyme, and I rhyme, and Christy is one of her clients, and Laura Gill is one of her clients, and we all write rhyming picture books. So again, they don't want bad rhyme. That's what they don't want. If an agent says don't send rhyme, I would say don't send them rhyme, because that's just not following their submission guidelines. But if they don't specify that they absolutely don't want rhyming picture books, then I would say those agents are in fact open to rhyme. What they're looking for are great picture books that they can sell to editors.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether it's in rhyme or prose. If it's a great, well-written, beautiful, juicy, fun, funny, whatever kind of book it is, with a great hook, then of course they're interested. But that's the part that you have to judge when you're sending your submissions.
And you can certainly go on an agent's website and see what books they've represented. And if you see several rhyming picture books there, they like rhyming picture books. I think sometimes it's a matter of taste. Some agents might not like rhyming picture books. It's just not their thing.
Right.
So, and you have to kind of get a sense of the agent's tastes, and a great way of doing that is seeing what else they've represented.
Yeah, and I also think that if you can, it's good to write. If there are some authors who absolutely only write in rhyme. Corey Rosenschwartz is one of them, and she's done very well. But if you can, if you do have both prose and rhyme, I think that can help too, because when an agent asks for more work and you have a rhyming manuscript and a couple of prose manuscripts, and they see that you can do more than just do more than write and rhyme, then that can be helpful. But if you're fabulous at writing and rhyme and that's your thing, and then you'll find an agent. It's eventually, it's hard for everybody, you know, but you just keep honing your craft.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to share one more thing here, if I can find the right screen. Goodness. Okay. I guess it went back to the beginning. We will just keep moving here. I wanted to show you. So as I said earlier, Julie and I are two of the co-founders, and John is one of them too, of the Picture Book Summit, annual online children's book writing conference. And the 6th annual summit will take place on Saturday, October 3rd this year. And if you are interested in getting information about that, please go to picturebooksummit.com, and there's a link where you can download a free revision strategies ebook, and that will put you on our list to get the announcements. We will be announcing our lineup for this year very soon, in about mid-June. We're not going to tell you who our speakers are. You have to come to the announcement, which is going to be a fun live event, and it will be recorded. So if you can't attend live, you can watch it. And that's when we will have our early bird pricing starting. But we're very excited this year. We've got a great program. So please go to picturebooksummit.com and sign up to be on our list if you're not already. And I wanted to remind you all one more time, if you're not on the list for getting these distancing social emails and all the other stuff we do, please go to writeforkids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet, and you'll get our free ebook to get you started writing for kids, and then you'll hear about everything else we are doing. So, Julie, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was great.
So much for having me. It's so fun, and I really enjoyed it. And it's always lovely to be with you and John anyway, and then to get to read picture books and share them is the best.
Reading picture books is always a good time.
Yeah. And I have about this many more that I didn't get to.
I figured you would. Yeah, you'd have a big stack, and it's hard to choose just one or two. It really is.
Right.
So, but you gave us some great information tonight, so thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.